everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is another one of our Solidarity Friday episodes. Kyle and Joe here. Kyle, how's your day going?
Not too bad. It's kind of a slow start, a little rainy, dreary here on the East Coast, but overall pretty good. How about you? You said it's getting cold out in Colorado.
Yeah, we had high alpine snow at least twice this week. So I saw snow on 2 different days up high. It's really awesome. Getting me really excited, but also a little tenuous, like how is this winter going to shake out? But we'll see.
I hear that it's supposed to be super cold, lots of snow in certain places. Or at least that's what the Farmer's Almanac says for this year.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Climatology, I think they call it. But yeah, I've got plenty of warm clothes, so I'm excited. We'll see what happens. Cool. So, there will still be seats available for our Navigating Psychedelics class. By the time this comes out on Friday, at least in the afternoon, the early class is sold out. We'll have a wait list up for that if you want to get on the early class, but there are still spots left in the afternoon, evening course that, what is that, Eastern time?
7 p.m. Eastern and then 5 p.m. Mountain time, 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Right. So folks in California, across the U.S., would be lovely if you want to join us. Canadian friends, Mexican friends, folks in South America. Yeah, we had what do we have? Brazilian students. We had people in Mexico, Canada. We had a couple new countries too, like Croatia or Serbia or something.
Australia.
But yeah, it's awesome how many people from Australia come. Like, I really appreciate that. I think for whatever reason, Northern Ireland kind of like got me the most because it's such like a area that's kind of like close to my heart. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. We got a North Irish student. Yeah. So people just from all over the world are joining in. I think we had somebody in Nigeria/Lebanon before, Israel. I don't remember the Israelis coming to class, but I know they joined us online at least. So it's just really awesome. I love it. And I don't think we need to go into why you should join too much right now. But if you're curious about our offerings, come check it out. psychedeliceducationcenter.com to learn more. It's an 8-week program. It's amazing. I wish I had it when I was an undergrad. I would have easily bought this thing, no problem. Even at the current price, given inflation and $2005, it still would have been a lot, but it's very, very worth it. So again, psychedeliceducationcenter.com. Anything else you want to plug, Kyle, before we jump in?
Imagination is Revelation. Definitely check that out. The Jung and Psychedelics course that Johanna Hilla put together. So yeah, check that out. I'm excited about it. Really awesome content. And I believe we have a couple interviews that we're going to be doing for that course as well in the future. So I believe we're trying
like additional master classes, stuff like that, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we have one lined up with Scott J. Hill.
Amazing.
Who, if any of you took the Shadow course, he was there. He wrote a book. What is it called?
Confrontations with the Unconscious, something about psychedelics.
Yeah, sorry, Scott.
Scott wants us to use the full name of the book.
Yeah, Confrontations with the Unconscious. That's it.
Jungian depth psychology and psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
And he's like a independent Jungian scholar living in Scandinavia. And really a wildly brilliant guy with some great stuff to share.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, definitely check that out. Again, psychedeliceducationcenter.com.
Yeah, cool. And if you want to support us, tell your friends about the show. Just send them your favorite episode. If you want to leave a small monthly donation, you could do that at patreon.com/psychedelics today. We need all the help we can get, and anything is appreciated. We've also got like books and shirts and mugs for sale at psychedelicstodayshop.com. So, all right, let's dig in. I want to talk about this LSD for pain relief thing first.
I always forget about the shop.
Yeah. And we're a little negligent, but I still wear my shirts all the time. And we've got like
I wear them all the time
and whatnot available up there. And yeah, I actually just tie-dyed one because it was getting to be a little worn out. So now I've got like that white one with the big spore print logo.
Nice.
Like on the chest, but like in tie-dye. So like the spore print's a little subtle, but you can still see the Psychedelics Today wording.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. Probably wearing that for 3 years now.
Yep. I need to update some of my shirts and sweatshirt and stuff like that. So
yeah, I told my girlfriend it was part of the Psychedelics Today reduce, reuse, recycle program. So I was like, cool. All right. Well, LSD microdose trial. This is one of the first ones I've ever seen. So this article is on newatlas.com, title LSD microdose trial for acute pain relief reports remarkable results. So I didn't realize like what they were doing with the study until just now. I was like, oh, pain relief, cool. Like I've got pain. This will be nice. So this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. I'm reading from the article here. They recruited 24 healthy subjects, each of whom took part in 4 separate experimental sessions, separated by at least 5 days, which is cool because the LSD will come off by then, and it'll work just as it would normally after 5 days or so. So 3 different LSD microdoses were tested, 5, 10, and 20 micrograms alongside a placebo. So I think it's interesting, like that range of dosing, like 5, 10, and 20, just to get a look at like, is there a physical effect? Is there like a significant enough effect from a really, really, really small dose, like 5 micrograms?
Yeah.
And, we'll know more later, I'm sure. But during each experimental session, subjects completed what was called a cold pressor test at 2 time points following dosing, 90 minutes and 5 hours after. The test basically involves plunging one's hand into a tank of water at 3 centigrade or 37.4 Fahrenheit, just slightly above freezing. Pain tolerance is measured by combining the amount of time one can hold their hand in the cold water with a series of subjective ratings regarding painfulness. And the researchers described the results as remarkable with the 20 microgram dose. So revealing prolonged improvements to pain tolerance compared to both lower doses and placebo. The results were sustained across both time points, suggesting the analgesic effect is just as prominent 5 hours later as it is within the first 90 minutes. So, beyond it being kind of like like this is a great tool for science, right? Cold water testing is pretty safe. Like no one's really going to get hurt. It just reminds me of stuff I've done in my past, like, who can keep their arm in the water the longest, like tough guy test. But it's just, over the course of 24 people, like that's a pretty good sample set. And it's interesting that the doses below 20 didn't really score or didn't seem noteworthy. But 20 seemed remarkable.
Yeah. Or they said it increased pain tolerance by 20%. That was...
let's see here.
It says the overall pain tolerance of 20 micrograms increased by 20%, meaning that the volunteers were able to remain immersed in the cold water for substantially longer with a 20 microdose of LSD compared to those on a placebo.
So I guess that means with 100 micrograms, it's 100% pain reduction. Kidding. It's not real. But, I'm sure there's going to be people that say that. But, it's really interesting. Like 20% is a substantial amount of pain relief for a non-perceptual, well, kind of. I think people are going to feel a little high with 20 micrograms, but certainly not like 100. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, just to also highlight that this was a study that was by Beckley at Maastricht University. And Amanda Fielding from Beckley made an interesting statement here as well about opioid use. So she said, and this is on the beckleyfoundation.org, the present data suggests low doses of LSD could constitute a useful pain management treatment option that is not only effective in patients, but it's also devoid of the problematic consequences associated with current mainstream drugs such as opioids. Over 16 million people worldwide are currently suffering from an opioid use disorder, and many more will become hooked as a result of oversubscription of pain medications. I'm encouraged by these results. I have long believed that LSD may not only change the sensations of pain, but also our subjective relationship with it, which I think that's sometimes where the pain is, right? It's your relationship with it and how you're possibly dealing with that. We must continue to explore this with the aim of providing safer, non-addictive alternatives to pain management and to bring people in pain a step closer to living happier, healthier, and fully expressed lives. So that was a quote by Amanda Fielding, the founder and director of Beckley Foundation.
Yeah. So like I've got a lot of friends with chronic pain. I've personally got a sort of chronic pain. Like, did you ever have chronic pain like post-injury, Kyle?
I still have chronic pain, kind of. this is something I've been going to like the doctors for, like on and off. I kind of stopped going, but I had a lot of lower abdominal pain. I think it was mostly associated with like scar tissue and adhesions. And, every time I would go, I think the way like I would try to describe the pain, like they thought it was like maybe anxiety related, until I went to a naturopath and he was just like, this might be like muscular. We can't really do anything with like, adhesions and scar tissue besides like going in, maybe cutting it out, but, try physical therapy. And when I went to physical therapy, the physical therapist was like, you haven't gotten any of this scar tissue worked on for over like 10 years. No, doctors never told me to do physical therapy or anything like that after my surgery. And I asked my parents about that. I said, did the doctors ever tell you like I should go back into like physical therapy or, because I had my whole stomach cut open, and they said no. And I'm like, that's crazy. So I definitely have like a lot of different like abdominal stuff that comes up. I could feel like that tissue pull on certain things and whatnot.
Right. It's another reason to leave a donation at Patreon so Kyle can get some massages on that. like that's pretty wild, man. Like I remember you talking about like kind of the somatic experiences around that at Solterra, and it's a really interesting thing. Like people don't like this idea of adhesions. Like people don't really have a good grasp on that. It's like these muscles should be able to like slowly glide on each other, and they always can't. Like it doesn't even need an acute injury to happen either.
Right.
And like dysfunction can really come up from that. Not to mention scar tissue, like really being a promoter of dysfunction.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. So I guess like LSD, it would be a little difficult to prescribe, right? Because you could just eat your mitt full of microdose pills and get yourself like 2 hits out of big bottle microdosing or whatever.
Right.
But I think it's, it's a problem worth addressing and going forward with. Like, I think this is a really valid treatment option, regardless of, like, why are we concerned about prescribing LSD in this way? If somebody can get a huge bottle of benzos or opiates and easily die from those.
Right.
You can't really easily die from LSD. You might have a weird time and get in trouble, but you're not going to die and you're not going to get addicted. So it's like the risk profile is much lower, I think.
Makes me wonder about like just, I guess, our cultural perception of like these holotropic / non-ordinary states of consciousness and perceiving the world differently. And like, I guess that like that cultural taboo is still there. Like, okay, like say if you were able to give somebody microdoses of LSD, what if they decided to take a couple of those and they ended up taking 100, 125, 200 micrograms. And then all of a sudden, then you're dealing with somebody that, potentially might have a bad trip. And I don't know, it's just interesting that it seems as a culture, we kind of are more okay with like the stupors and the depressants, alcohol and opioids and benzos and stuff like that. And, some of these other substances that, maybe help us perceive things a little bit differently in another way. It's like, just stigmatized. And I don't know, maybe that's just our relationship with consciousness, that there needs to be like a right way of seeing the world. I don't know.
Right. That's interesting. And like, I think once the risk profile is communicated appropriately to various places, like I could see that being a pretty good clinical trial. Like it's pretty easy to say for pain, like let's run this trial with cold water all the way through phase 3. It's pretty easy to get multiple sites, like different kinds of populations. And it's a lot cheaper than the MAPS protocol to research, right? Because you're not going for psychedelic dosing. It's like, far less risk. So I think that would be a really interesting avenue. And I would love if different groups would fund that. So let's hope. Here's to hoping.
Yeah.
Not much money to be made on it, but it would be amazing if they could put it through that way.
Yep. Yeah, this isn't really the first study that examined pain. Eric Kast from the Chicago Medical School was exploring this in the 1960s, giving LSD to terminal ill patients. And, it was documenting that their pain, their perception of pain and the relationship to pain really decreased over time, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And we have this study with David Nichols, not David Nichols, I'm sorry, sir, I forget your name. There's a researcher, Nichols, doing work on, I think it was DOI or DOM at like a way microdose level, like 1/100th or 1/200th the normal dose, and showing like analgesic and anti-inflammatory, substantial anti-inflammatory properties with these drugs at microdose levels. And I think that's fascinating and really promising, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, you can take this thing that has like hopefully minimal psychiatric risks and really help a lot of people. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of skimming through this article by Stan Groff and Joan Halifax on psychedelics and dying. And this is
looking for stuff on pain there.
Yeah, this they just have a section here on Eric Kast research, just talking about how they were using it as an analgesic, which is it's exciting. And then also something else I stumbled across too was as we started to talk about this LSD and pain. Went back into a presentation I put together for Drug Test, which was a show put on in New York. And it was that specific one was about, physical fitness test. And so I was trying to research psychedelics and pain. And the one thing that I found that I thought was pretty interesting was Dr. Torsten Passy, in his book, The Science of Microdosing Psychedelics, talked about phantom limb pain. So that's really fascinating, using low doses of LSD to help with phantom limb pain.
Right. So I found a great quote here from Kast, about Kast from this new Atlas article. So Kast hypothesized 50 years ago these analgesic effects were the result of LSD reorienting attention away from pain sensations to a more encompassing psychedelic experience. Well, that hypothesis certainly is reasonable. When high LSD doses are administered, it doesn't really explain the results seen in this new microdose trial. Like, I don't think it explains it, but I think it could point at the right thing, right? Like this idea of kind of like flashlight consciousness versus like a more diffused kind of lantern consciousness, where you're kind of just more aware of more things. I remember having a professor in my undergrad talk about meditation and pain, saying like, well, the pain's still there, but you just have a very different orientation to it, and your like relationship to it's a lot different. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier about like its relationship to the thing. Like the same way arthritis is painful, somebody else could be in pain because they didn't get the right Audi, like convertible or something, right? Like it's still pain. And like psychedelic, like microdosing could theoretically change someone's relationship to that situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're constantly feeling that, I mean, I'm just thinking about like my own experience with this like lower abdominal pain here and there that would flare up. I mean, like as I started to feel like some of that scar tissue start tugging on muscles and stuff like that, like, you know, it really kind of limited me at times when it really first started to hit. Like I didn't really want to like exercise as much and do a lot of stuff, because the more I did that, I don't know, maybe like the tightening of the muscles just kind of like pulled on everything, and it did cause a lot of pain. And you know, doing like I definitely worked on a lot of that stuff in breath work. And, you know, I think this is the reason why I started getting into like a lot of the somatic stuff, and always kind of doing massage on, you know, that scar tissue and whatnot. But I mean, it's really been kind of like a relationship with it. It's like I have this injury, and how am I in relationship with it? Like I could let it just like overtake my life at times. And for a while, I feel like it did. And then another time I was like, well, what happens like when I can't engage with it differently and try to, you know, I guess develop a different relationship with it and say that it's not limiting. Like, okay, maybe I can work with it in different ways. So it's taken me like a really long time to actually kind of start changing my relationship with it. So that's why I kind of come back to that relationship piece at times. Because for me, it has been.
It's a nice anchor in our like process relational kind of philosophy that we're trying to help push. It's like, it's, you know, the pain doesn't exist in and of itself. It's in relation to things. Like, you know, it's not like a thing in and of itself. So it's our relationship with it and about it and all sorts of fun stuff like that. Yeah. So I would say that there's a lot of promise here. I would hope people keep on this task. Like I've been thinking like just time scale wise, like we have many, many, many decades left for this to like complete. Like it's going to be a long process and a long project. And it can be frustrating at times to see all this stuff go piecemeal like this, but this is how science operates. And like I guess you're very welcome to do whatever you want, but you're not necessarily going to have the science behind it to really understand what's going on, how it's working, what are the most appropriate doses, stuff like that, until these studies are complete, which is going to be a while. Yeah.
Yeah. We're at the beginning.
Yep. If it weren't for the drug war, we might be decades ahead, but I'm just happy now that we are back on track, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Just got to keep pushing, keep advocating, just keep educating people.
All right. So next bit of news, I'll go to a light one. So this band Papadosio just came out with an album called Microdosio. Robin, Curl, and Wes sent me a message about it. Like I kind of saw that it was out and I was like, yeah, whatever. But I was like, okay, Robin, I'll check it out. And it was pretty good. Like the titles of the songs are pretty funny. The album art's beautiful too. But so I'll just read off the track names. Fly Agaric, Cubensis, Lion's Mane, Chaga, Versicolor, Shiitake, Cordyceps, Agaricon, and Reishi. It's like all like mushroom psychedelic names largely, and Versicolor is interesting, but I don't know that that's a psychedelic, but more skin disorder. But it's really interesting, and it's kind of a cool exploration of psychedelics through art. And I hope more bands are doing that. I had a fun time listening to it, and yeah, I hope you check it out soon, Kyle, too. But yeah, I'd encourage folks to listen, and it's on streaming platforms everywhere, I'm sure.
What type of music is it?
So it's like exploratory improv meets electronic. So it's like jam band with a little bit of electronic, but it's like minimal vocals. There's some Terrence McKenna samples in there, I think.
Oh, nice.
I think in some of their old albums, they've got Buckminster Fuller quotes like inserted, like audio samples. It's pretty cool stuff. So I think they get it. I remember listening, I think it was these guys, to one of their leads in Papadosio on the Andy Frasco podcast talking about his psychedelic use and like how extreme it was in its past. It was like pretty wild. So they've got the influence, and perhaps it would be helpful for sessions, but listen to it first. I was going to say, rock music is good for sessions.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it sound like it's something that you could use for sessions, or is it too?
I think you can use anything. I just remember Lenny at one point like critiquing this one band that I was using for my own sessions a while back. What was the name of the band? Caspian. It's a really, really great post rock, beautiful kind of arrangements, really long songs. And he's like, this is great. I could see how this would be awesome in a concert, but it lacks the range, the sonic range that a lot of music you would use in sessions having. So like all the way to the sonic highs with like just a full spectrum across the frequency of what you can hear.
Right.
So like vocalists with tremendous range, for instance, or like a full orchestra filling in every little category that you could have. Rock bands don't always have that. But I thought that was a helpful critique, and I've kind of taken it to heart. So like once in a while I'll hear something and I'm like, oh, I think this is good enough. So, it's just paying attention and like being really critical. It's a different kind of listening too.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, is Sigur Rós classified as a rock band? Because I would say their music is great for stuff.
I call them a post-rock band,
okay.
But they work just fine. I use them in sessions all the time. Like they're definitely influenced by like the classical tradition. Yeah. So like they really do some interesting and beautiful stuff.
Not all their tracks work, but there's some really great ones that just like you get that full range of like emotional depth, and it's my roommate used to blast it. And like, Lenny would like, sometimes that would come up in breathwork sessions. And he would just like blast that stuff all the time. And then sometimes it would like trigger me. Like I would think back to like my breathwork sessions or something like that. I'm like, yo, can you turn it down? I'm starting to have like an emotional response from this music.
All right. Which is interesting, right? Like, let's look at that for a moment. Like, I think the goal of a lot of artists is to create art that creates a response. And so like, typically it's just like, oh, cool. I'm dancing, cool, grooving, whatever. Maybe you're smiling a little bit, but like really, I think what a lot of artists want to do is that deeper emotional connection and like deeper emotional responses in people. So it's like, they're really doing it. But like you and I, having done a lot of breath work with that music, it's like,
It's different.
Like,
yeah, it's like,
this is like,
it's reminding me of an experience I had once.
right. Like some really profound transpersonal stuff is getting like thrown back in our faces. And it's like,
Yeah.
like it's good, but it also is kind of like unexpected. And like, what is that? And like, it's just interesting our culture's relationship to music relative to like how we use music and breath work, and like perhaps how artists would hope that the music's listened to, though it's kind of out of their hand once they publish it.
Right.
Yeah. So interesting stuff. I just remember this one person begging me to put on the East Forest Ram Dass tracks mid-session at one point. I was like, no, because there's words there. I don't want to do that. So I like kind of like bided my time and did it like an hour or two later, post-peak, just to like say, no, let's do what we agreed on, and then we'll do that. So it like worked out okay, but it was like definitely not what I wanted to do. So like that kind of stuff can come up in psychedelic sessions, but it can also, in breath work, thankfully, it's like too loud and you can't really ask like, hey, turn this polka music off, please. It's like, no, it's one track. Typically like we mix ahead of time. It would be more ideal to mix in real time, but
I think Lenny does a lot of mixing in real time, or at least he has an outline of what he's going to do, but it's fun watching him like orchestrate. Sometimes I would like, take my blindfold off and I'm just sitting up there and you just see him sitting there next to his mixer, putting CDs in. You're like, whoa. Felt like sometimes I was in some sort of like cosmic spaceship and he was just like guiding us all.
I'm sure that's how he feels.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. It's such an
music.
Interesting relationship to the people to just be in charge of sound. And yeah, I think we're going to get into that more like as we're developing the music modules for Dream Shadow. I've already recorded a few master classes with people who have been doing this for decades. So it's going to be a really interesting thing, I think, once we get there. These projects take too long.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of projects, folks. We're trying to manage this and then doing some Dream Shadow stuff and all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah. Not like we don't love it. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
I can't even really imagine a more ideal situation for me, honestly. Well, if my hands didn't hurt all the time, that would be cool. But other than that, I'm good. All right. So next bit of news here, controversial and interesting. Compass Pathways, UK-based firm, filed papers at NASDAQ to go public. So they want to do, it seems like, an IPO on the stock market. NASDAQ, CMPS will be their symbol. And this is really interesting, right? It's really controversial, but it's also really interesting. So this, I think, I'm kind of speculating here, seems to me to be the first psychedelic company to be listed on the US stock exchange. There's been other companies on the Canadian and other weird kind of like non-primary exchanges, but like NASDAQ's a big deal. It's, I don't even remember what the other one is. Whatever. NASDAQ is just like a listing.
Yeah. Where's MindMed? Are they Canadian? They're on the stock market, right?
They are tradable. I think they're on a thing called Pink. Like I think I bought like $100 worth of MindMed just to like keep track of what they're up to, because you get like the investor updates and whatnot.
Right.
They are. I can pull it up right here. Pulling it up on what was it? OTC. Yeah, OTC I think is the market, but MindMed or MMEDF is their ticker. So like just the fact that it's a mainstream index like NASDAQ or like listing or whatever, I think that's a big deal. But yeah, some of the commentary here was pretty interesting. So obviously Peter Thiel backs this organization. Peter Thiel made an absolute killing on PayPal. He's also involved or runs this, I don't know if he runs it, but he's in charge of this really kind of creepy company, Palantir, 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 maybe. And Snowflake is another one that he's involved with that went public recently. Yeah. So Peter Thiel owns 7.54% of Compass at this point, which is interesting. And also Atai Life Sciences is a major stakeholder, but I didn't really see how much they own of Compass. But it says major stakeholder, so I assume more than 10%, but hard saying. we know other investors at Compass, and Compass has obviously been quite controversial. Like I haven't heard much about them since Horizons,
Right.
when George Goldsmith was on stage talking about Compass. You know, like I know some people tried to like take some shots and like see if they could get him to like take a better, more progressive stance on the drug war and other things, like giving a little bit of credit to the people who have been, under the gun of the drug war for decades, but kept on this work. If it wasn't for those people, like Compass wouldn't be here. Like, yes, university research started up in the 90s and early 2000s again, but there was decades of underground people that kept this thing going, that put their lives on the line. And not to mention all the indigenous folks too. So like, that's kind of like, I would just love to see these big companies at least say thank you here and there. Right. Or like maybe give 0.25% of profit to Drug Policy Alliance or some other group that can do some good drug policy work.
Right. That would be nice.
I don't think we'll see it, but I'm a hopeful thinker sometimes. Let's see here. So Compass Pathways is hoping to raise $100 million, but it could really be a lot more than that by going public. They've already raised $80 million in Series B financing. So they've got a lot of money to put towards completing these trials. And it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And so it says here that Atai Life Sciences, who's like a part owner of Compass, is potentially also looking to get listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange next year with a value of at least $800 million or more. So it's really interesting. It's a little creepy, but it's, I'm just happy that this stuff is becoming more mainstream, and it's good to know all this. So the winners of this IPO are going to be Compass for sure. Compass is going to be a winner. Atai Life Sciences definitely is going to be a winner because they're part owners of Compass. And then everybody else in the psychedelic world. So here's their justification on this article from theseedinvestor.com. Let's see. Other companies are going to see benefit in this by improved market sentiment for psychedelic companies, increased merger and acquisition activity, which is interesting. I think it's largely a good thing. Good ideas will get gobbled up, more money comes in, people that are involved in the space in a positive way can then start on new projects and tackle new areas, and hopefully that works. So they're calling that the trickle-down effect. So yeah, obviously it's kind of tough seeing people make $1 gazillion when you might not be making much in this field. But like by seeing big amounts of money come in, other people are going to be winners here, and new companies can get started, new ideas can get rolling. Yeah, so I'm kind of like just hopeful that, people that get $100,000 or whatever, they can then start something new, and maybe people that get multiple millions can start something new as well. So time will tell. Like, I'm excited about it. We'll see. And I think that's it for now on the investing topic. All right, so let's talk about MindMed Australia, or Mind Medicine Australia, for their September 1, 2020 press release. It's interesting. MindMed Australia submits Australian first application for the rescheduling of psilocybin and MDMA. It's amazing, right? Have we talked about this group much on the show, MindMed Australia?
I don't think so. I mean, we might have mentioned them once or twice. We will have one of the founders on. I think we're recording with them next week. So
excellent.
Yeah, we'll be able to hear more. And actually, one of their employees, staff members, was part of our course. So we got to learn a little bit about their program, which has been really cool. And I think we're going to help do a webinar with them too.
Absolutely. It sounds like we'll pre-record it for a webinar series, which will be cool because we don't have to be up at 5 a.m. or 3 a.m. our time to record it. So from what I recall, they're trying to replicate somewhat what MAPS is doing, but for the Australian people. Yeah. Australia is a little bit regressive in terms of drug policy and progress around the psychedelic stuff. So it's good that they have like a Australian specific group doing that kind of work.
Yeah, totally. When I chatted with one of the founders, that's what I asked. Like, are you guys kind of taking like this MAPS approach where you're going to be creating the training programs and regulating this field? And it sounds like that's what they're trying to do. But we'll learn more when we have one of the founders on.
So I want to read the first paragraph here from their press release. Mind Medicine Australia has submitted Australia's first applications to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, to reschedule psilocybin and MDMA so that they can be more easily used as part of clinical therapies for the treatment of major classes of mental illness. The rescheduling would move these medicines from Schedule 9 of the Uniform Scheduling of Medicines and Poisons, which deals with the prohibited substances, to Schedule 8, which deals with controlled medicines. So it sounds like they've got a little bit more of a sliding scale than we do here, with just like 3 buckets. Like they've got like 9 or more, it sounds like. So that's interesting in and of itself. But it's just nice to see that we're, moving it from like the scary area to a place that can be used more for research and medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes me wonder how, like, do countries outside the US need to run their own trials, or can they leverage science from elsewhere? I think every country is going to be a little different on that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that I'm guessing they probably pull from a lot. In here they did reference the research that's going on here, but I'm sure they have their own regulations and boards and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is interesting. Yeah, it says, if successful, Australia will become the first country in the world to reschedule these substances for their therapeutic potential. Yeah, I wonder like what their timeline looks like, and I wonder if this would be like way ahead of like what MAPS and Compass and USONA and everything's pushing for.
Yeah, like it's really exciting, and they've got some really great people on their team. They've got it looks like even a judge here, so the Honorable Andrew Robb, available for interview about this stuff. I don't really know what the honorable means in Australia, but over here it's usually judges. I always love those titles. It's so funny to me, but it's great. So here's a quote from Tonya De Jong, the executive director, about this. So, unlike conventional treatments, which often require patients to endure years of daily medication and weekly support from a mental health professional, medicine-assisted psychotherapy using these medicines can be effective after just 2 to 3 clinically supervised sessions. The medicines are safe and non-addictive when administered within a medically controlled environment. So that's good, But that transitions us to the thing you noticed in the article, the quote being, "We do not advocate for non-clinical use of psychedelics or any other prohibited substance, nor do we advocate for any change to the law with respect to non-clinical use." So, I think this might just be a simple political play. Let's not go too far. Let's do some baby steps just so we can help people, like low-hanging fruit. But I also noticed it's like a nod to business as usual. Like it's okay to keep arresting people for drugs.
Yep.
And, I get it. Like you don't want to try to address every issue at once. You want to address the issue you're working on. It's kind of like, I want to learn to play guitar so I can be in this orchestra, but I got to learn every instrument before I can play in the orchestra. Blah, and you get all bent out of shape, like trying to solve everything. Like, I think it's okay for organizations to solve one problem.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, guarantee there's organizations in Australia working on drug policy. I don't know any. So I assume that's true. They're a big enough country to have drug policy advocates, but it's, it's about time that drug policy changed, and it would be helpful if we had people like this group kind of saying, hey, these things aren't that harmful. Look, drugs in general aren't that harmful. Let's figure out how to do this skillfully, perhaps like Portugal or Switzerland did, and just like really do what's good for our people. But, I get it. Like, let's make this stuff medicine also. It's just, I don't think organizations can justify doing everything. Like, how do you see that, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like they're trying to do a specific thing, getting this MDMA and psilocybin legal for therapeutic use. So it does make sense that they, would state that coming from an organizational standpoint, also a professional standpoint, to really emphasize that they're really just looking at science and clinical use. And, on the flip side, I would hope that there are professionals that feel the need to want to change drug policy as well. And I think that is really important because, this is something that we point out all the time, right? If it's just going to stay within the clinical paradigm, what about the people that can't get access to it, that are still going to be arrested for these substances. And if we're really thinking about people's overall wellness and health and life, like, do we want potential clients, people that are already suffering, then in jail or having part of their rights taken away from them because maybe they were trying to heal? So, I think it is important for us in the professional world to also speak up about drug policy. And I know it's scary because it does feel like professional suicide at times, because you want to keep it within that clinical scope so you can, feel professional and remain professional. But I don't know. I just always think about, people that are trying to heal and, do we not advocate for drug policy change? But I get it, right? Like, we all kind of need to tackle the thing that, that we feel most passionate about, and we have the energy to do that. But, on the flip side, I would like to see people also advocate for policy change as well. I mean, something that we come back to, right? Like use context. And I think that's important to really kind of just observe and to reflect on, that people have been using these substances for a long time in many different contexts, and why box it off into one thing and say, this is the only way we're going to use it, and it's only okay if we use it this way. But, hopefully there's like some religious organizations over in Australia that are pushing for like religious use. And hopefully there's people in Australia pushing for, decriminalization and drug policy change as well.
Yeah, let's hope. So again, Mind Medicine Australia, keep doing what you're doing. Perhaps figure out how to get a little softer on drug policy and like not, underhandedly saying things like people should continue going to jail for drugs, for nonviolent offenses. Like, clearly not in our ethos. I would hope you don't believe that to be true. But if you do, perhaps examine that closely, please. Yeah. I'm really excited. We haven't talked about this yet, but Dr. Carl Hart has a book coming out, Drug Use for Adults, or an adult guide to drug use or something like that. It won't be out till like January, February. But I think it's going to be a really big book. Penguin Random House is behind it, I believe. So it's going to have massive distribution. And hopefully we can talk to him about it, but we'll see. But he's just a massive influence on me, talking about just like cut the bullshit. Like, yes, you like your drugs. Other people like their drugs. Let's just put it in context. Like, how harmful is it really? Should we be putting people in prison and ruining families for generations for these kind of made up, arbitrary things around drugs? No, I don't think so. And yes, decriminalize nature for sure, but why criminalize people at all unless they're doing bad stuff?
Yeah, and maybe I'll say this, and maybe it's not the right thing to say, but these are things that I self-reflect on. So I feel like we should all take some self-reflection time. It's like, how much of it too, like when we're working within, I get it, like we have to work within the system and what the system allows, but then, I also wonder like about job security, like if anybody could do psychedelic therapy, then shit, I'm a therapist. Maybe I don't have a job, and maybe it just needs to be contained to this area. Right. I've definitely felt like some of those biases come up, like doing training and thinking, okay, like this is the path I'm going to take. And yes, like this is a career path. And then just thinking like other people kind of getting on board and be like, what? They don't have training to do any of this stuff. And then that stuff really kicks up. But, I have to pull back and say, all right, well, how much of this is like, oh, wow, yeah, I feel like there's job security there if we just contain it to therapy. And I have the privilege to be able to offer this to somebody down the line. And so, I think that's important to examine. I definitely sit there and think about it every once in a while about like, the way that we approach topics and just some of these thoughts. So I'll put it out there.
Like furthering that, like asking the question, do you honestly believe that psychedelics should only be contained in the realm of psychiatry and like modern mental health? Like, is that actually what you believe? And if so, why? And if so, like, is it not okay for people to keep doing their religion the way they've been doing it for thousands of years in many cases? Is it not okay for, an adult, to try LSD? Like, should they go to jail for trying LSD? What should the penalty be? Think really long and hard about what you actually think here. because this is going to have really long standing consequences. You know, I think people should have the freedom to try these substances if and when they want to. You know, clearly we need to do a better job educating folks before they use, but you know, that's going to come in time, right? Like, to give him perhaps more credit than he deserves, like Joe Rogan's done a lot to popularize psychedelics, and like I can't really say he's done a lot for harm reduction, but he's at least like mentioned people like Terrence McKenna, and he's had Dennis McKenna on the show a bunch of times, and other psychedelic leaders to like say, hey, there's a lot more here than just like smoke DMT and talk to some things. Like perhaps people, I believe people should have the right to do this and not face legal consequences. That's a big reason why I'm doing this show.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, but then even just to like, you know, self-reflect on how'd you come to this, right? Did you have the privilege to come to this through some sort of underground, to do this on your own? And then to pull back and say, people shouldn't do that the way that I possibly did it when I was younger. It needs to be in this certain container. And I just think about some of those experiences.
With legal consequence.
Yeah. And I think about some of those experiences when I was like 19 and going out in nature with a friend and finding the beauty and everything. And yeah, okay, I didn't know everything, and it was definitely naive, and you know, definitely found myself down some rabbit holes at that age, but those were pretty meaningful experiences. And would I say never to do that and it needs to be done within certain contexts? I don't know. I got to examine and be like, well, I found those to be pretty meaningful in my life when I was younger. You know?
Right. So like, what do we have in the world for young people to help them with meaning making? Like next to nothing. We've got like angry memes, 4chan, like horrifying bullying online, like, and that's just a placeholder because there's no meaning. There's no like context for where you fit into society that makes sense for an entity as amazing as humans. Like that's a big deal. Like humans are amazing. And that's kind of like probably something we agree on. Like human being is a fascinating, interesting, like infinitely powerful thing and endlessly interesting. So like to just say, okay, all you've got is video games and being an asshole on YouTube. Like really? Like, is that what life is? What if you were able to give these people deep ritualistic initiations into adulthood with 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms, you know, given they were screened appropriately? Like what a send off into adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that I touch on often, and it's been a huge part of my work. Is just, or a huge, you know, interest. I wouldn't say that rites of passages is a huge part of my work, but a huge interest of we don't have that. And I think that's exactly what I was looking for. Like after my near death experience, was like looking for something to give meaning to, like give context to what the hell I just went through. And there's nothing that like I really attached to that helped me kind of make meaning out of that besides that experience that really kind of shifted things for me. So I always just think about like that experience, like what I was going through in that time. And it's like, wow, like I, you know, it's definitely put myself at risk a little bit, but I mean, that was the whole reason why I'm still here, you know? And I feel like I have to advocate for that at times.
Right. So perhaps just have a little bit more compassion with your inquiry. Don't hold such a hard line. Understand that the drug war is highly racist, highly just like problematic for so many reasons. And it's not designed to help people. It's designed to keep people down. So like the drug war needs to go. And if we can play a part, we should. That's my take. People, you know, should be able to create all sorts of interesting psychedelic communities and use cases that we don't even, like you and I haven't even imagined yet. It's going to be really interesting to see what goes down. So time will tell how it shakes out, but there's a lot more interesting stuff to come around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of exhausted all of our topics here.
Yeah, we're hitting almost about an hour, so maybe this is a good time to start wrapping up.
Cool. That sounds good to me. Yeah. So again, there's seats available still for our our 7 p.m. Eastern class for navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists. It's an amazing 8-week program that will give you the tools to start being able to communicate with your clients about psychedelics at the very least, help with harm reduction, give better advice, talk kind of safely for your license around psychedelics, which is, it's a big topic for us in the class. I kind of realized that, it's a very regular thing. Like, is it okay, or when is it okay to talk to my clients about this stuff, or can I critique their use? It's like, there's a lot of really interesting wisdom in our class that is helpful there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the class?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about signing up, definitely check that out before the classes sell out. Class 1 sold out, so we still have a few seats left in our evening class. That's 7 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, psychedeliceducationcenter.com.
Yeah. And if you want to support us, we always need support. Small monthly donations are great at patreon.com/psychedelics today. You get early access to some episodes. You get some other perks. So check that out. And you can also buy some merch, some shirts, mugs, stickers, whatnot over at psychedelicstodayshop.com. And we've got all sorts of free classes available at psychedeliceducationcenter.com and some other cheaper independent options. So check that all out. Oh, and Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists is CE approved for the state of California for nurses, therapists, and psychologists. So if you're in another state or elsewhere, just check ahead of time to see if you can get CE credit, because it would be nice if you could learn with us and use that towards your license. So,
and on if you're curious about CEs, you just have to attend every Zoom class. So just to put that out there.
Right. Yeah. Be sure you can make it to all of them. You can't just skip.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Kyle, it's been fun.
All right, Joe. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll catch you next week.
All right. Signing off for Psychedelics Today. See you next time.
Take care.